Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is very well. My name is Adrian Sweeney. I'm the Sales Director here at Planet IT. For those of you that know me, hello. For those of you I've yet to meet, welcome also. So firstly, thank you all for taking time out to join our live event today. Obviously, since the mass movement of everyone working from home, we wanted to put together some advice and best practices that you can all use both personally and within your businesses. And today we'll be covering 4 main areas. Firstly, we'll have Kelly, who is our Security Services Manager. She'll be providing an overview of the latest security issues that we've seen. James, our lead technical architect, will be doing a quick overview of how best to use different tools to collaborate amongst your teams and things to be aware of. Followed by Mike, who's our backup services manager. He will be providing an overview on data and some best practices around using that data. And we'll finish with Stephen, our help desk manager, on what trends he has seen on the help desk. So if you have any questions, and I would like to encourage everyone to ask questions, please use the question and answer feature on the right hand side. Don't worry, it will only be myself that can see them, and we will pose any questions that you do have to the team at the very end. So first up, over to Kelly.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for that introduction. Hello, everybody, and good morning. Hopefully, I can give you an overview of what's currently going on with the threat landscape as we are at the moment. So to start off with, maybe a little bit about me. I've worked in IT for many years and for small, medium businesses. During that time, I've dealt with all sorts of strange requests from, is this my coffee cup holder? And yes, I genuinely have had somebody ask me that. It was one of those old bubble Macs with the CD drive poking out the front. And after explaining that to them, we both had a little giggle about that one. To working for a well-known software manufacturer and rack mounting servers, building their servers, and remembering one particularly hot summer where we were balancing fans on the back of those servers to try and keep them cool. So I've had quite a varied role in IT up until now. Moving on into cybersecurity, I must admit, opened up a whole new world for me. And to be honest, I'd probably always been a little bit scared of it before. Helping people daily and with some really complex cases where they're trying to find how the bad guys got in, who on earth run it, who done it, which is always the question you get asked right at the beginning. And almost having to be a counsellor when on some occasions they have no backup or their backup was still connected and that was encrypted as well. And I have unfortunately had customers turn up with their servers in their hands, begging for help or trying to get their data back off it. So I think that's why I'm very passionate about what I do. I want to protect first, not after the event, because it's horrible to see people like that. Daily for me, it's a struggle to stay ahead of the bad guys. There's always something new, always new exploits, always new vulnerabilities, always trying to pick through the information to find out whether it is something that I need to be worrying about and need to be telling our customers. It's not just Sophos that I work with, because I know that quite a few of you will probably know that that's my background and where I've come from. But simple things like checking old accounts, making sure that the basics are covered is part of my job as well. And it is what I love doing. If I could have the next slide, please. So I'm always asked what the biggest threats are and what's going on. Is this genuine? Do I need to be worrying about it? Phishing has to be the biggest issue at the moment. There are a lot of phishing campaigns out there. And since lockdown, the amount of phishing campaigns has gone up 667%, which is just huge. I mean, the bad guys are really trying to make some headway off the back of all of this. During the pandemic as well, and even before lockdown began, domain name registrations had risen from a normal around 1,000 to around 5,000 a day. So basically they were trying to get URLs to full URI before this even started. So trying to keep ahead of all of that is just mind-boggling. Unfortunately, during that time as well, the click-through rate has also gone up. So people are unfortunately falling for these campaigns. So just make sure that your users are being as vigilant as ever, because yeah, the stats don't lie. On the next slide, we have some examples of campaigns, emails. So as you can see, they're always preying on fear, and at the moment, with the uncertainty that we're going through, that's all they're going to do. On the left side, it suggests there's a possibility of a cure for COVID-19. And on the right side, a possibility of a tax refund from the government. Oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it? And some helpful links that you can click on. Well, yes, please don't. Just a tip while I'm looking at this slide, if you hover over a URL, so one of those blue links in the government email, for example, it will show you the web address that is actually going to open. And that's a good indicator of whether the link that you're just about to click in is genuine. Don't click it unless you're absolutely sure. Unfortunately, it's not just email that the bad guys are using. On the next slide, thank you. We've got just one of the best SMS campaigns that I've seen. So you can see how genuine that looks, and knowing the government website as it is, it looks great. Again, the click through, you can see there is going to a webdirect.org address. Just be aware that if you are allowing your end users, as many companies are at the moment, because we need to still be able to work, access to their work email on personal devices, this can affect your company network. So please make sure that people are still vigilant, even if they are using their personal devices for work, probably even more so. Next slide, please. So I would think that we're all a bit sick of this one at the moment. Work and home life can be a bit like that. But why is it so slow? So on the next slide, we see who else and what else is connected to your network. Have you actually counted the amount of devices you have on your home network and what kind of devices they are? PlayStation 4, Kindles, iPads, Android phones, work laptop, Wi-Fi printer. Do you have one of those fridges that orders your shopping for you, for example? And are they secure? I would think the answer is you have never thought about it, or when was the last time you checked? Please, please make sure that you're checking the security on all of your devices. Now, there are safer ways of working from home, which include VPN. So obviously you get to use the company infrastructure. If you have VPN, I would always recommend connecting to that when you're working from home. It's the best and most thorough way of making sure that you are protected. And then for those of you that are more cloud-based, just be aware that while you're working on documents and things on the local machine, that you need to check things like your antivirus is up to date, because that will be your protection there. There are other applications out there that can give you more security when you're working with the cloud, but the standard AV on your laptop should do the job for you. So my top tips: even when you're not in the office, lock your screen. Absolutely one of the main things I do. I found my son in here wanting to tinker on my machine the other day, putting in my password wrong 5 times. So I'm glad that I locked it. But make sure that it's always locked. You never know, somebody could hit an enter key, somebody could drop something near it and send an email that you didn't want to send, or go to a web address that you didn't mean to, and I'm sure that would be a difficult conversation with your IT manager, or even worse, HR. So just be aware, lock your computer as if you're in the office. Webcams for me, I'm a little bit paranoid about webcams. One of the easiest things for the bad guys to control, and oh my God, it gives me the creeps that people could be watching me. Webcam covers are cheap and easy to get off, I don't know, Amazon or wherever you would like to purchase them from. But if you haven't got anything and can't get hold of anything, use a piece of blue tack. It does the same thing, but just be aware that that's something that can be hijacked very easily. And then something else that is in the news, and I know James is going to go into a little bit more detail in the next section, is video conferencing. Just be vigilant when you're using this. Make sure that it has good end-to-end encryption. And I was trying to think of ways to give you guys, well, what is good end-to-end encryption? How do I know if it's any good? To be honest, ask us is probably the easiest thing. And make sure that you've got good, solid passwords and that they are not all the same across all of your accounts and devices. Password managers are easy to pick up. They hold and store passwords for you, and they will suggest them if you just can't possibly think of another 8-digit password. So just be careful. And then kids apps, especially for myself at the moment working from home, there are a lot of strange, weird and wonderful apps that kids are looking at the moment, and especially if they're in another room and you're trying to get your head down on some work. Just be careful what they're using and what they could be spreading on your home network. App Store and the Google Play Store, rule of thumb, pretty much they do the checking for you, so anything on there is pretty safe. I think if anything is asking you to turn off security features, then be very wary of it, and unless you're absolutely sure, I would not let that be installed. And then lastly is phishing again. I know I said it at the beginning of this, but you should be testing your users at this time. Now is the time to be making sure that your users are vigilant, and it's still phishing coupled with your end users are still the biggest risk to any network. So make sure if you've got the phish threats, the know before, the campaign software, that sort of thing, that you are setting those up and testing your users at this time. Well, that's me done. Questions or anything around anything that I've discussed or anything else, pop in and we can catch up at the end of all of this. But now I will hand over to James.
Thank you for that, Kelly. And as Adrian said at the beginning of the session, I'm going to talk about collaboration, which undeniably in this time has become one of the most important day-to-day tools that we have. I'm going to talk about some of the do's, the don'ts, and the kind of how to stay safe and how to make the most of what we have in front of us. So before I really jump into that, I suppose a little bit of background about myself. So many of you will have met me before or will have spoken to me before at a Planet event. For those of you who haven't, I'm James Dell. I'm the lead technical architect for Planet IT, and my job is to find technical solutions that overcome our customers' challenges. This allows me to get my hands onto the greatest software and hardware, everything that's out there, the latest, and really deep dive into the solutions. And before I joined Planet IT, I was an IT manager across education, healthcare and retail, and I was really able to gain like a cross-vertical perspective, so I know how solutions work kind of in the real world of IT as well, and not just from the world of IT resale. So that's really enough about me. Let's talk about collaboration. So while we are separated, being connected has never been more key. We really need these tools to stay engaged and to stay connected and to keep working. So I've got some sort of 6 tips and tricks that will allow you to make the most of any platform you're using for collaboration, whether that's Microsoft Teams, Skype, Zoom, WhatsApp, House Party, or anything else. It's all about maximizing your effectiveness. So the first of this is the sharing of calendar invites. The number of times that I've been invited to join WebEx sessions or to join Zoom meetings, and people have gone, oh yeah, here's a link in an email body, but they've not sent me the calendar invite. Sending those calendar invites really maximizes the effectiveness. People are living by their calendars now. People, if it's not in there, people lose track of time. We're not in the office. It's not the same as seeing people walk into a meeting room. So make sure you're sharing those calendar invites. Make sure that it's got all the key links in there. It's got everything they need to be able to join the meeting, whether that's dial-in telephone numbers, whether that's PIN codes. Make sure it's in there. Make sure it's easy. And it's an easy way to make sure that everyone's in the meeting at the right time and ready to go. All of these apps we're talking about, so Teams, Skype, Zoom, WhatsApp, all have integration with other applications. So, for example, Trello is an application like that which allows you to manage your project plans and work effectively as a team together. That can be pulled into Microsoft Teams, so that rather than having to go to Trello and work separately, you can actually integrate together, and the communication stays with the data then. So you're not working in two places, you're not talking separately to where you're working. Where the app integration is available, let's use it, maximize it, pull it together. And this is available for so many applications that sit out there. They will tie into these into Microsoft Teams and Zoom because they know how important it is for you. We all know about noisy conversations. You start a chat up on Teams about something business focused, and then maybe that project is 1/10 of what you're doing in the day, and a lot of what's happening in that chat is really not relevant to you most of the time. I know I have this on a regular basis. I'm involved in lots of projects and lots of aspects of the life of Planet, and I know that there's a lot of things that really I need to dip my toes in and out of, but I don't need to be seeing all the 300 notifications that go off an hour. So mute those chats, put them onto silent mode so they're not sending off notifications, so they're not telling you every time someone updates, someone likes, someone drops a new Word document in there. Just use it so that you can go back to it when you need to, but it keeps you focused on what you're trying to achieve. While we're talking about focus and staying focused during a call, one of the biggest things that is really difficult when you're working over something like Teams or you're working over Zoom is taking notes and staying involved in the conversation and in what's happening, because you're looking at a screen which will maybe showing you a presentation like this one is now, or it might be showing someone's face, and you're trying to make notes, whether that be on your laptop, on an iPad, or on paper. And you're not really in the meeting then. You're kind of in your head trying to remember what the person just said and write it all down. Well, these apps really are designed to make life easier. So inside all of the big products, Teams, Skype, Zoom, all that stuff, there is the ability to record calls. Now, I've been using this really regularly. So essentially, if I join a big meeting, and I know it's very important that I keep all the information that comes out of it, I tap the record button at the start of the meeting. I will just talk normally and be engaged and be part of that meeting, really go for it, really get the most out of that time that everyone's in one call. When it's finished, I'll open up the recording, I'll listen to it back, and I'll convert that back into my notes. It might take a little bit more time, but actually I'm finding that meetings are shorter, more effective, and that at the end of the meeting we have really good outcomes. But I've actually managed to do that without having to spend 20 minutes during the meeting trying to write notes that aren't really that useful because I've rushed them through. Now, it's really important when we're talking about the fact that we're separated to enable your staff and your team to have non-work chats. Now, it's important, though, that this is not done inside the main body of all the places you're working. So, for example, in Teams, you can have channels. Those channels can be related to a project, related to anything specifically that you need. But you can actually have a non-work related chat built into it and go, right, let's give our team somewhere to talk, somewhere that they can have that water cooler moment where they can have a conversation with their colleagues about, about what was on TV last night, about, what they've been doing in their garden. Let's give them the freedom to still feel that they're part of a team, and give them a platform to do it where they're not leaving the platform that you provide them and moving off to WhatsApp or moving off to iMessage because it's the only way they can do it. Give them somewhere that's safe and they can do it. It's trusted. It's on their laptop. It will keep them motivated. It will keep your team together. A really good example of this is, as Planet IT, what we've been doing is having on a Friday a working sort of working pub. It's not really a pub, is it? It's a virtual environment where everyone can drop in and have that kind of Friday lunchtime chat, and then you can bring your drink along, or you can eat your lunch, or you can just sit and have a chat with your colleagues, the people that we don't get to see, the wider team. So we've got 50 people sat on a call, just having a conversation for an hour on a Friday, and everyone feels engaged and feels part of the experience. It's worked really well, but it means that people are focused and they're not filling work chats with non-work related communication, but they are still feeling as part of the team. And then finally, keep communicating. This is the thing that I'll keep banging on about. Something that I think is really important is these apps, these platforms are there to enable you to keep working, to keep communicating, to keep your team going forward. They're not there to try and prevent you doing that. So all you need to do is keep using these, keep communicating, and keep using the features that are there. Now, as Kelly mentioned, there have been a lot of headlines in the last few weeks about Zoom and security risks. Now, the simplest thing to say is these platforms have never been tested to the level that they are now. The bad guys, as it were, really want to get into these apps because more people are using them. But there's some things that we can do to try and be a bit safer about the way we work. And what I've tried to do is give you some kind of top tips for security whilst collaborating. So the first one is the obvious one. Is always use a secure platform. So on Zoom, there's a padlock and the word's encrypted at the top bar if you're using an encrypted chat. If you're not using encrypted and it's a public chat, anyone can drop into that. It's a simple tick box when you set the chat up, but if you don't see it, you're not encrypted. On Teams, on Skype, all those chats are encrypted by default, the same with WhatsApp. It's just about using the right platform for the right thing. Secondary to that, is use the lobby function on all of these platforms and have a password protected meeting. So the lobby function really is important when we talk about having people that are not necessarily part of your business joining in, because you want to keep them separate. We don't want them to jump straight into an active meeting and join when maybe you're mid-conversation about something that maybe is about the meeting you're about to have. Use the lobby function to pre-buffer the meeting and introduce everyone at the same time. That ties in really nicely to my next point, which is always have a start and an end of a meeting. And what I mean by that is not the hello and goodbye. What I mean is use of rooms. When you set up a chat on Zoom or on Teams, it can go all day. It can either be in your personal meeting room, which is a space that belongs to you as a user on that platform. And every time that you use it, you jump into the same room with the same password, the same setup, and it just works. But this means that anyone else who drops into that session using an old link that you sent them 3 weeks ago can still get back into that room because it's your personal room. It's always set up the same. What you should do is set up bespoke chats for bespoke reasons. This will then lock those rooms off and mean that only the people that are invited will join for that time period. And once you end that meeting at the very end of it and you say goodbye and everything's done, it closes that meeting down and no one's going to jump in with expired invites. I talked about recording as a positive thing. Now on the flip side, anyone can record inside Teams or Zoom. There's a button to record the meeting. You can actually turn that feature off. And if you're having a meeting that's sensitive in any way and you don't want users to be able to record it, make sure you're turning that feature off. Likewise, if you don't want people sharing documents inside that meeting, turn that feature off. When you set the meetings up, you have all these options. Dial in the meeting space for what you need. Not what is there for default. When you're sharing anything, like we're sharing this presentation to you now, the most important thing is to make sure that we're really clearly looking at what we're sharing and we're clearing up our workspace before we do it, because it only takes 2 seconds to make a mistake and share the wrong window or the wrong experience, and suddenly someone's seeing intellectual property they shouldn't be seeing, they're seeing HR documents they shouldn't be seeing. So really be careful. When we do screen share, I always recommend you close any windows you don't need, because if it all goes wrong, at least you're only going to show them your desktop or something that's not going to be business critical. And the final one is think about your surroundings when you're video calling. In the background of this shot, we've got Joe Exotic, probably not what you want to be showing in a meeting. all of these apps have the ability to either blur out your background or replace them with a bespoke flat image. If your office space that you're working from home has, information around it, pictures of your children, things you don't want to share with anyone that's in that meeting, use these functions. It's about making you feel secure as much as it's about making the meeting focus. Because if you haven't got this background on and you've got a window behind you and there's cars driving or there's people coming to your front door, whatever it may be, people are going to be distracted by that. So keep it nice and secure, nice and safe, and nice and focused. And that's it from me. So I'll finish talking and I'm going to hand over to Mike, who's going to talk to you about backup and data protection.
Thanks, James. Yes, so morning, everybody. My name is Michael Davey and I am the Backup Services Manager at Planet IT. Not wanting to wax lyrical about myself too much, as you'll be able to see on my intro slide, I've been with Planet for the last 7 years and I'm a founding member of the technical team. I've got a wealth of experience in data protection, which in turn makes me paranoid enough to keep 3 copies of everything. Yes, it is an expensive hobby, and it leads to regular arguments with various computers and other IT infrastructure. Now, before I head into the rest of my slides here, I just want to note that we sent out a backup snapshot in the last couple of weeks, following on from the one that we sent last August, which will help to match up your infrastructure to the points that we're going to reference here. But I'd encourage you all to read through these if you can, so that we can ensure that you're as protected as possible. So on to my next slide. Where are you saving your files? So in most circumstances, there are up to 3 locations that you can save your files. Locally, so that could be on your PC, on a USB drive or an external hard drive, on a server or shared drive, and also in the cloud. In my experience, most of our customers are saving to the latter 2 options, server or cloud, which is absolutely the right way to do it. Saving files locally is an antiquated practice that opens up significant risk, because if that device is lost, broken or stolen, etc., there's a good chance that those files are gone forever and potentially even falling into the wrong hands. In short, if the device isn't backed up, whatever's on it lives and dies with it. Server resources, however, are included in dedicated backup plans, meaning that if something is compromised or deleted, there's a much higher chance of recovery. Not only this, but you open the door to easier collaboration and sharing if everything's saved in a central location within the business. Lastly, cloud resources are often seen as more resilient, which is true in their reliability. There's no local hardware. They're typically the best spec and equipment that are available. You've got to think Microsoft, Amazon, they're buying really, really high spec kit for this. And they often have things like versioning and autosave built in. However, as Kelly mentioned earlier, they are a honeypot for malicious attacks at the moment. So we always recommend having a backup of those as well. Now, if anyone would like to know how or more on how this can be achieved, I can assure you it's really easy. And I'd be happy to discuss this in more detail outside of the event on an individual basis if you want to look at how you can back up your cloud environments as well. So segueing into my next topic, are your backups working correctly? And how can you tell? Well, in all of our support agreements, we have primary contacts that we as a service provider will typically communicate with on a more regular basis for infrastructure and back-end services like backups and disaster recovery. I'd encourage everyone to make sure that you're familiar with who this is within your organization to ensure that you've got as quick and accurate communication channels as possible. Now, all of our backup services are reported on daily via built-in email updates that come to the backup team and allow us to quickly check if there's been any issues since the last backup job was ran. If you're using your own backup services internally, like for your own laptop at home, like a lot of people are using at the moment, again, if there is an option to set up email notifications on these, I highly recommend that you do set them up. If you're not sure how, or you want a little bit of more information as to how that can be done, then by all means, pop me an email and we can have a chat and make sure that we can get that sorted for you. But for us, these notifications are then used to create tickets. Now, if there's any issues, that then in turn notify the primary contact that we discussed in the first point that there's been an issue and that the Planet IT team are working on it. So outside of the automated back-end stuff, what else is it that we look at? Well, we spend a lot of time looking at backup efficiency. So it's all well and good having a good solid backup, but if it takes a week to run, then you're still pretty vulnerable compared to the more favorable daily schedules that we implement across the board. This in turn leads us to be in constant review of your backup infrastructure. Most commonly, this means regular maintenance, different checks, different updates, but it can also mean looking at the age and the effectiveness of your hardware, software, and systems to evaluate if they're still up to the task. As mentioned in my opening slide, This is all part of the snapshot documents that you guys will all have received over the last couple of weeks and previously again in August of last year. We definitely encourage looking over these when they come through to help us help you and keep your data as secure as possible. So lastly, to round things off, nice and quick from me here, here are 5 top tips for your backups and disaster recovery. The first one, always make sure that you're saving your files in the right place. Please, I implore you, don't do it locally. If you're saving onto a server share, like I say, they're part of the backup plans. They're more open for collaboration with the rest of your team, and you can be certain that if something happens to your device, they're still going to be there. Again, if you're saving into the cloud, especially with solutions like Office 365, the minute you save a file into Office 365, whether it be OneDrive or SharePoint, it keeps a version, and it will then auto-save and keep every iteration every time you save, or it auto-saves as you go throughout the day, meaning the potential for data loss is much, much lower. Keep 3 copies of your data, the live data, the backup data, and the backup copy, ideally in a separate physical location. It might be paranoia, but it is best practice. We know that if anything does happen physically to the area where your data is kept, so even if it is on your server, 9 times out of 10, you're backing up from your server to another device that's in the same place, whether it be the same building or the same room. So like I say, we always recommend having a secondary location separate physically from your primary location, so another office or a cloud repository where you can keep as much as you can in copies of your data to ensure that should the worst occur, 747 lands on the building, God forbid there's a fire, especially at the moment, because there'll be no one there to be able to see if that is the case, you are still going to be protected in those instances. Thirdly, make sure you're keeping your backups for a sufficient length of time. Now, the industry standard and what we will typically recommend is 30 days. The reason for 30 days, it bears quite significantly on finance and payroll. So these are systems that people might only use once a month. You use it at the end of the month or the start of the month, and then you won't touch it again for another 30 days. Now, if there was an issue with one of those files, say halfway through the month, you're not going to access it until the end of the month, and you're not going to know. So if your backups only go back for the last 14 or the last 21 days, you could be in risk of losing all of that data. So we always encourage at the very least 30 days as a minimum if you can. Data is getting bigger, but thankfully storage is getting cheaper. So it's never been a better time to make sure that you've got the investment in place to make sure that your backups can go back as long as possible. My 4th tip, test your backups at least once a month to make sure that they're working. It's something that we do internally in the backup team for all of our customers. We do checks on your backups. The software itself has inbuilt checks that it runs to ensure the integrity of those restore points. But the last thing you want to do is be relying on something that then doesn't work. So we absolutely recommend test, and test again. For those of you who are using Macs at home and you have Time Machine, do a test of your Time Machine backup. For the people who are using backups on their local PCs that they're using as bring your own device at the moment, test them, try and restore something. Does it work? If it doesn't, let us know, because we can definitely help and make sure we can get those things back on track for you. And then lastly, make sure that everything that you need to have protected is protected. I know it sounds stupid, but a lot of the time we speak to people when we're first coming into these sort of conversations with them before we sign up to any sort of agreements or start working with people, and they might have 5 servers, only 3 of which are being backed up. So whatever functions those other 2 servers are performing, if they go, they're gone. There's no way of getting them back without that backup. So make sure that your servers, your file shares, your cloud resources, and in some cases, user machines, if people are using intensive CAD software where it's prohibitive to use it over the VPN or use it outside of the office because they're such large files and doing it over that network would be too slow, make sure those critical systems are being backed up. And that's it from me. So I hope you found those bits interesting. Obviously, please do use the Q&A. And if you want to loop in with me outside of the event here, by all means, give me a call or email me directly. But I shall now pass you over to our Helpdesk manager, Stephen McCran.
Thanks, Mike. Well, good morning, everyone. It's just about the morning. So a brief introduction into myself. I've been working in the IT industry for about 7 years. 5 of those years I've been managing a help desk team. Previously, I've been working with some large organizations such as Disney, Sky TV, Virgin Atlantic and BBC, and I'm still quite hands-on even though I've been managing for 5 years, I'm still mucking in with the engineers, and I think many of you have spoken to me in the past as well. Well, I think what we'll talk about next is the best ways that you can get support from us at the moment. A lot of you have noticed that not much has changed since we've been working from home. We've been working home since before the situation has started, and I think a lot of people didn't even notice, which is great. But in order to get support in the most effective manner, I think the best way and to get most of your support through would be through LogMeIn. So some of you will have this installed on your desktop as a little icon that says Planet IT, and this is probably the best method for most people. It gets us on your machine with an engineer, and I'd say we typically suggest this for most issues, as we can see your issue firsthand, remote onto your machine and fix the issue. The second method would be using the support mailbox. You see the email address there. This is probably more for medium and low priority requests, where you might need to give us some more information, send us like approval, or for folder access, or maybe even a new starter form. But sometimes it's useful for more complicated issues that we need to investigate. You may be getting a weird problem, or you need to send us a screenshot. That's the best method. And probably our last method is the help desk number. To keep our call times low, I'd say use this for business critical issues that affect multiple people and urgent queries that you need us to respond to straight away. So they're the three contact methods that we have at the moment. You may notice that when you do raise a ticket, at the end of, once it's closed, you'll get a survey form through. Since everyone's started working from home, we've had 98% positive feedback from that since we've all been working from home. So I think we've actually managed to adapt quite well to the current situation. And all of these have been filled out by our support clients. It's really important to receive these because it tells us if we're doing a good or a bad job, which really helps me and the team sort of correct anything that we're doing wrong, or obviously feedback to those guys really what they're doing right. So positive responses go straight to the team. As soon as you fill out that survey, it goes into Teams, which is the platform we're using now. So they straight away see if they've done a good job, and everyone in the team sees that, and they normally have a good conversation about it. The negative and neutral responses, that triggers a separate workflow that goes through to myself, the account manager, and the customer relationship manager. So we query the ticket, fill in any gaps, try to find the root cause of the issue, and following from that, we'll give you a call just to see what went wrong, where we can make improvements, and actually take it back to the team just to see where we are. So as you can see, all of these things, filling out the survey responses, it has a massive influence on how we work and how we can improve. And as you can see on that slide, they're all the people that you've probably seen on site at some point. It's a lot of members of the team, so you've probably seen them out and about really. So I think the next bit for me is going to be talking about our top tips really. And these are just a few tips from me and the help desk team, and naturally all of these we can help you out with if they do go wrong, but we think that these will make your working from home experience a lot smoother. So the first one is the password expiry. If you can actually reset your password before it expires while you work from home, everything should go a lot smoother. You won't get locked out. Naturally, if you're locked out and you've got an urgent meeting to join, you're kind of helpless. You can't log into the laptop. You're going to end up giving us a call. And if you've got an urgent meeting, I can understand that's going to be super stressful. So if you can reset it in advance, it should make it a lot smoother. You shouldn't get locked out of your machine. The next item that I've got is checking that you have your conference applications installed ahead of your meeting. So like WebEx, Zoom, Teams. If you get an invite through, just check you got the software. It doesn't take long for us to get it installed, and at least then, if you have any problems, we can maybe help you check like your mic, or maybe do a test call before your meeting, so then it's smooth when you do get on with the client. The next one I've got is being vigilant when you're at home. It's when you're in the office, it's so easy to speak to a colleague or one of the other members of the team just to get a second opinion on an email that you've just received or an error or an issue that you come across. If something looks off, just give us a call or raise a session through, and we can check it out. It's not worth the risk at home, and especially now attackers, as Kelly mentioned, they're going to be on the rise now. So yeah, it's really important. The sixth point is going to be with all the applications that we're using, we're so guilty of thinking that we know how to use these applications like Excel and Word. We use them day in, day out. Of course, we're experts, but in actual fact, there's always those things that we think we should learn. Mail merges or using those formulas. Now's the perfect time to do that training that we've always been putting off. Someone always goes, "Oh, how do you do those VLOOKUPs?" and normally cobble something together. But now's the perfect time to get that training. And again, we can help out with that. But I think now is the perfect time to do that training. To back up Mike's point, where you're saving your data, a lot of people that we've noticed are saving their data on their laptops as they're working from home. I'm just gonna get this email, I'll save it to my desktop because it's easier, and I'll edit it there, and then it lives there forever. There's no point in risking it. Save it in OneDrive or your shared drive over the VPN, whatever method you do. And if you're uncertain, give us a call and we can talk you through it. It's if your laptop dies or that it doesn't auto save, you're not going to be able to necessarily get that back. And that's so frustrating when you're working at home. Next point for me will be just be smart. Just because we're all working from home now doesn't mean that we should change how we run and operate as a business. Just as I said, a lot of people now are trying to cobble solutions together to work from home, but we're forgetting the security risks. If we were in the office, we wouldn't necessarily think like that. It's just be vigilant and don't do anything you wouldn't normally do. And when in doubt, please give us a call or get in contact with us. But they're my top tips. Again, if there is anything there, the contact methods to get in touch with us, and yeah, we can help you out. So I'll hand you back over to Aid. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Steve. So yeah, thanks everyone, really. So thanks to all of our presenters, Kelly, James, Mike, and of course, Steve. Also want a special thank you to Barry, our marketing manager, who's put all of this together today and organised the whole thing. I know, Nick, is there anything you'd like to add at this stage?
Yeah, thank you guys. Absolutely brilliant and a great insight. I think it's really important to stay safe, not just from a health perspective at the moment, but just make sure that we're aware of the dangers that are out there at the moment. I mean, some of those figures that Kelly mentioned are 667% up in phishing campaigns. I mean, that's frightening. That's frightening as business owners. That's frightening. I know. There's a lot more people out there that are trying to exploit the way that we're all working at the moment. So obviously the backups and disaster recovery and just thinking about what we've got as again in our businesses, making sure that we're safe and we've got an available restore point if ever needed, if we ever had a breach of any kind. But most importantly for me, this isn't I don't want to scare anybody. This wasn't a point of us trying to scare, or we're not trying to sell you anything. We're just here as your support team. And if you, from a help desk perspective, we're still running our full support. We haven't changed anything. So Steve and his team, Adam, supporting that. We haven't changed anything around the amount of people that we've got there. So we are available. I think as Steve mentioned, we're here from a full help desk capacity. We're available. If you've got any questions or you want a second opinion, please contact us. And we're here to help. So yeah, just to reiterate, not to scare, and we're not trying to sell you anything. We just want to be here to support you.
Brilliant. So just looking at some of the questions that have come in, actually a good first one that we've got here, Nick, and you're probably going to be best answering it, is how has the current situation changed our business? If at all. Well, it has, obviously, but
yeah. Thanks for that, yeah, it's changed massively, if I'm being honest. I think to steal someone's quote yesterday, which I quite liked, we've gone from 2 offices in our business to 57. So the whole of Planet are working remotely now. We've got DR plans and policies in place. We've got our applications. We've got the skills and the resource, obviously, to cope with that. And we're coping from a technical perspective really, really well. And I think Steve mentioned that most customers didn't realise that we were working from home before the lockdown. So yes, we're doing okay. The biggest change is the communication methods, and again, James touched on it. It's a learning curve for all of us. We've got all of our staff. When have we ever had all of our staff off-site working remotely? I mean, it's just not heard of. So we're massively reliant on Teams, on our cloud-hosted phone system, which we moved to for 3 years ago as part of our disaster recovery plan, which, let's be honest, we never thought we'd ever have to invoke, but we have, and it's all working fine and perfectly. But it's funny how these applications like Teams have become a business critical application, which we're utilizing and using. I mean, when I say every day, I mean every minute of the day now, not just for business critical stuff that again James touched on. We are running pub lunches, pub quizzes, and that's typically on a Friday, just to try and keep the Planet family feel that we've always had and we've been lucky enough to have. So yeah, that's kind of how it's really affected us. It's just the communication and the way that we're working is slightly different between us.
All right, perfect. We've had lots of questions come in, which I know we've been answering privately within the Q&A section. One that has come up a few times here is Zoom safe for my business to use? What is Planet's recommendation on this? Kelly, it's probably best for you to answer that one.
My take on Zoom is yes, it's safe. I wouldn't discuss government secrets over it, but it's probably going to be one of the most secure video conferencing systems, and certainly the fact that they found the flaws and they fixed it all so quickly just shows that they're working on their product. So yes, Zoom for me, I would use, absolutely.
Brilliant, thanks a lot. I'll do one more question that I only recently learned was, how do you record a Teams call? Stephen, I don't know if you just want to quickly just shout out to everyone how you do that within Teams.
Yeah, so within Teams, as long as the meeting organizer has left it as default, if they haven't, in the meeting options you can set whether or not recordings allowed for that call. But when you are on the call, when you hover over the call page, you have your mute and share buttons. There's also 3 dots to hit more actions. If you click that there, you'll get more options, and you can see start recording as an option there. So that's quite simple.
Lovely, thanks a lot. So yeah, thanks again everyone for attending today's live event. We have recorded it, which is kind of why I asked that question at the end. And we will be sending a copy of all of the slides and the whole event out to everybody as well. I know that's come up a couple of times. Yeah, so yeah, thanks on behalf of everyone from Planet IT. Stay safe, keep your chin up, and hopefully I look forward to speaking to you all soon. So thanks again.